Hey y'all, I am lucky enough to be visiting with an icon in Gilmer County. Did you know you're an icon, Vic Davis? Anybody ever tell you was an icon?
Well, I've been called worse.
Can we talk a little bit about the old days? Because we're sitting out here watching a pot be cleaned on a fire. Does that kind of remind you of things your mama might do?
Yeah. So the pot for sure, because I've eat lots of meals out of something like that.
Yeah. And would your mama have built a fire sometimes if there was a hog killing?
I'm sorry.
Would your mama have built a fire sometimes if there was a hog killing?
Oh yeah, she never had an electric stove. We always had a fireplace, and well, finally did get a heater for warm by, and of course had to build fires and that. Dad was most of the time he built the fires, but she could.
She cook on a wood stove?
Oh, cooked on a wood stove all of her life. She never
Wow.
had electric stove.
Wow. Did she have indoor plumbing?
Never had the indoor plumbing.
Oh my
Me
goodness.
and my brother Larry, you remember Larry, of course.
Yes.
After we got out of school and we didn't make much money and couldn't help much, but we always talked that if we wished that our mother could have lived a few more years so we could maybe help get water in the house, but of course we never did. And she died early age, really 49 years old.
Oh no,
Yeah.
wow.
She was 2 weeks short of 50.
Goodness gracious.
She had cancer and suffered horribly. That was back then. People didn't run to the doctor like they do now. And you waited till you're almost dead before you went. But yeah, she wasn't an exception. It was just a rule. Practically everybody was about in the same boat. Some people were a little better off than others. But,
What year were you born?
34.
1934.
Yeah.
And so would your mama have been born in the early 1900s?
She was born in 1904. Her and my father both. She was actually, I understand, about 3 months older than him.
Yeah.
But they were both born in 2004.
In 1904.
1904, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Did you see things in your lifetime that you wish you could have been different parts of? Did you live without plumbing? Did you give up on things that you wish you had had?
Well, we didn't know any better. So
Yeah.
As far as like toys, that's one thing I think it was good for us in later life. Larry, of course, we made our own toys. We'd take a block of wood and of course Larry he'd make his better than mine. He'd cut little springs and make springs and put under his. I just put wheels on mine and push it in the dirt.
Wow.
And I don't ever remember having bought toys. We made them, but it was good training in a lot of ways. It was just a way of life.
How long did your dad live?
He lived till he was 65, barely.
Wow.
Yeah, he lived several years after Mama. And Dad was real handy. He could back in those days, when they baled hay, they used wire. And he could take a pair of pliers and hay baling wire and just fix anything. And Larry took after him a whole lot, maybe me a little bit. Of course, Larry went on to be an expert mechanic, self-taught, and made a good living. And I've had some mechanical ability, maybe, and was able until 2 or 3 years ago to keep up my own stuff mostly. And I built motors, but a lot of it came from having to do stuff when I was young.
Well, here you are, 88 years old, and you're the shop foreman at 57 Heaven. That's pretty awesome, isn't it?
Well, I got that name. I don't know if I deserve it or not.
I think you do.
Maybe I've been a little help. The first thing I helped Dwight with was one of his old GMC truck, and it hadn't run in lots of years. But that's something I kind of cut my teeth on, and he asked me if I'd help him get it going. He gives me more credit than I deserve, I think. But I did help him some get it going.
That's an awesome truck, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure is, yeah.
Yeah, now let's talk about trucks, because I'm going to get a little close up, but you've got a beauty right there. Tell me about that truck.
Well, that's a 1936 Chevrolet. I had restored not a lot of cars, but a few cars, and I built a 36 Chevrolet two-door sedan for my daughter and gave it to her for a wedding present. That was 1980, and I told Larry one day, I said, if I restore another vehicle, I'd like for it to be a pickup. Well, he went to Valdez, North Carolina, where his sister-in-law lived, visiting, and he come back and he said, I found your truck.
Wow.
So told me what it was, and I called the guy, and we made a deal. And I didn't ask enough questions. I asked him if it would, I don't know how much of this boring story you want to hear, but I didn't ask him enough questions. I asked him if it would run, and that was about it. And he said, oh, yes, it'll run. Well, when we got there, it was on a January the 1st or 2nd, 3rd maybe, in 1969, and he had the thing running. Well, water was gushing out of the radiator, and it would run, but it didn't have any lights, it didn't have any muffler, and no heater, and water pouring out of the radiator, and we was 250 miles from home and planning to drive it home.
Oh, no.
Well, make a long story short, we rounded up, it turned out to be the water pump, and one of his relatives up there knew where an old used motor was, had one on it, and fortunately it fit. And we took off about 1 or 1:30 one day, 250 miles from home with that thing, and drove it all the way home until it got so dark I couldn't drive anymore, and I was just this side of Gainesville. And Larry got out, and it had the old wires in under the hood, was just frayed, and he started hooking wires together, and the fire just flying everywhere, and finally 2 lights came on. And we jumped in it and made it home after dark.
Wow.
And I said all that to say this. I drove in the yard, and it was after dark by then, of course, and I told my wife, Sally, that I bought a truck, and so she went out and walked around it a couple of times, and she liked old cars, but maybe not as good as I did, but she walked around it and said, that's mine. So from that day on, or that night on, it was her truck. Well, many years later, I finally got started on it in 1985. I tore it all down, and I did all the mechanical work, set the motor up in it, put a later model engine and automatic shift and all the newer stuff so I'd make a driver out of it. And she never would really admit it was hers, but it was in her name. I'd tell her to go look at the tag receipt.
Well, let me take a break right now, because I'm going to move so we can put that truck in the shot. So I'm going to move just a minute. Hang on just a minute.